always had a girlfriend in high school, and um, got together with my wife now. We've been together for, oh shoot, 22 years since high school.
Oh, wow.
So married 20 of those years. But yeah, in high school, it was like we were what it was. We graduated in 2002. I remember it was on her birthday. Her birthday's 9/11.
Oh, wow.
And we weren't together at the time, but we had the same class together. And I just remember we were in art class or something, and everyone was turning on TVs and everything that day. And me being the asshole that I am, not, I just don't really, I don't, have never really paid attention to the news. I've never really grasped, I'm in my own little, was always like working out and doing sports and other stuff like that. So I wasn't really paying attention to stuff. And all of a sudden everyone's paying, all this attention to the TV and, the towers that have been hit
Wow.
and everything else. And my dumb ass is like, no one's going to remember this in 10 years. This is just like, this is before they both collapsed. So
Yeah.
like, I mean, not to my defense, but like, holy cow, like I didn't realize that it was going to turn into what it turned into. And then and so that was our 9/11, watching that happen in school together. And then we ended up getting together, and I had mentioned to her, hey, I'd like to join the Marines. I had like done their pull-up challenge in high school and stuff, and just kind of wanted to be part of that.
Yeah.
And she was like, I mean, the war had kicked off by then, and all you heard on the radio, and at this point I was like kind of paying attention, right? It was like, I kind of want to do this, and we're at war, and which made me want to do it more. And she was like, if you join right now, we're done. I'm starting to see vets come through the doors of Costco, and um, felt like shit, dude. Like that, like seeing these guys, and they're, just that, I felt like such a sense of belonging to that over there, and I just wasn't there yet. It was a hard sell, but I talked her into a 2-year contract, minimum 2 years, right? That's what it was right then, it was 2 years. And she, she was like, great, that, yeah, let's see where it goes, right? She was reluctant, but at the same time, I've already drug her through so much shit that she's like, what else can this dude put me through? And and that was it. I went in like, as soon as I got an okay from her, I went in the next day, and they were all about it. I mean, I brought in the paperwork. My debt is completely clear. I have zero debt right now. Um, let's get it done. So yeah, to end of 2000, it was the end of 2006, right at the end of 2006 is when that happened. And then I was off to basic.
By 2007, I mean, I think at that time we're hearing mostly about Iraq, but of course Afghanistan's still going. And so, I mean, in your mind, you say when you're at Costco and you're seeing the vets come in, you have this sense that, that's the crew I should be with.
Yep.
Did you have a feeling not only that you wanted to go into the army, but that you wanted to go into the army to go to Iraq or Afghanistan?
Essentially, it came down to, I wasn't, I felt like I wasn't being a really good example to my kids. I wasn't being a good enough husband. I wasn't providing well enough. And I just felt like I needed to do, I needed to do something else to gain some sort of perspective in this world. But at the same time, in the back of my mind was, I'm going to get to go kill people. I'm going to get paid to do it. And um, if I die, my wife gets $400,000. So, worst case scenario, I die in a war that my kids can, for the rest of their lives, say that their dad died in Iraq. That's the only Afghanistan wasn't even in my purview at that time. Everyone was going to Iraq for the surge, and I and or and my wife would be have 400 grand, which was a decent amount of money at the time, for a single mom and two kids to
Wow.
deal with it. So that was my mindset.
What was your first impression of Iraq?
Hot. I'm from the desert, so it wasn't like overwhelming, but it was just dusty and just what the news made it look like. Minus we were in more of a rural area, so we weren't. There was lots of farmland and lots of walking to get from point A to point B.
What kind of missions did you do?
So in Iraq, we were we were kicking in doors. We would get intel and go kick down a door, and um, we'd police up every military aged male, and they'd uh, do the bat and hides on them, and then bag them, and
What
and
what do you mean by bat and
they
hides?
put bags over their heads, and then they'd give them to the Iraqi army, and then whatever happened to them after that.
You're saying kick indoors, so what I'm thinking is intelligence comes in, something's going on in this house, there's a weapons cache, there's something going on, and so it's 2 o'clock in the morning, kick in the door, go in. I mean, I don't know if all that's right,
We
but
would do air, so we would do
that's
like a lot of air assaults. We had a really gung ho um, company commander at the time. Like I think he ended up being a Delta commander at the end of his time served with that unit. He was recruited by Delta, from what I understand, rightfully so. One of the most squared away, high speed, low drag individuals I've ever met, right? But um, we were doing like he was spinning up birds like 6 hours before we were supposed to fly out of the country to try to get one last mission in this guy, and taking like the S shops, whoever was around with him, kind of thing. That was the pace from the time I got to Iraq until the time we left. That was our pace there. So we were
just
just
go,
we
go,
were
go.
constantly on missions. Whatever, if we didn't find the cash in this house, regardless of the intel, they just said somewhere, right? If we didn't find it in this house, we'd police up all those dudes, give them to the Iraqi army, go to the next house, running, sprinting to the next house, trying to avoid squirters and ambushes and whatever else. Just it was like a dead sprint all the time. It seemed like it wasn't like this tactical, like until you got into the house, and then we're like clearing houses, but it wasn't the way I was trained to clear houses in basic. I was like we it was like the whole house was a one room now, and we're just kind of doing this. I almost shot my squad leader in the face. I would have if I wasn't so green. So we were clearing. We got from one house. I think this was my first mission, and it was at night. I was in Nods, and we were clearing a house, and I ran in and cleared this room and went up these stairs. Had no idea what these, very inexperienced, right? But I was super gung ho and ready to get after it. And so they they I peeled off and they peeled off a certain way. Didn't realize that like there was like this uh all all routes led to the roof. I didn't realize that. And so like I kick in this door and I see a figure right in front of me with a gun and I put my rifle up to put two in his face and my shit's on safety. And so
Wow.
and that was a huge learning lesson for me right then. And
And you had your finger on the trigger?
yeah, I had it twice. Like I would have shot him.
Wow.
I mean, he was just, I kicked the door open and there's a dude right there. Uh, and I shot guns my whole life. So, what didn't miss a lot,
Did you guys
especially in
debrief
close quarters.
when that mission was over? Did you guys get together and debrief?
Oh yeah. I think we talked about it. I think we talked about it. And, I almost want to say, that I got smoked for, I almost want to say I got smoked for not taking my safety off.
Oh, oh God. Well,
Because
I'm
I would have got killed.
glad you had
You
your
know?
safety on it at that moment.
Yeah,
So I
you
want
know
to
what I mean.
ask,
But that's the mentality of these guys. They're like, you're here to do a mission, and but I mean, yeah, I got a pretty stern talking to about, and then they were like, okay, we got to kind of reel these guys in a little bit, and everything else. We tapped in and or like synced up with how these guys ran their operations. And I started really paying attention to, you know,
yeah,
what everyone else was doing. And it was a lot less reckless after that. That was a huge learning lesson. But yeah, that was it, man. Going one house, policing up dudes, going to the next house, policing up dudes, finding shit, not finding shit, didn't matter. We're taking them.
I want to ask you, you said, that you wanted to get after it, and I understand what you meant. You were into this specific mission in this house, but thinking more broadly, getting after it. I mean, what are you getting after? Are you getting after helping Iraq to become a democracy? Are you getting after just being a soldier? What are you getting after?
Well, I just wanted to. There was an adversary. I didn't know or care what it was, and um, I was in 110,000% support of the people I was with. Um, until and I still was until Afghanistan, but it didn't dawn on me just what kind of an influence we were having over a culture and a society in a different place, and how they would change their entire existence. This is me looking back, but at the time I was wanting to get after it and wanting to be as the biggest asset that I could be, and I'll let Uncle Sam turn me into whatever kind of freaking killing machine he could turn me into. That was that was it. That's where I was at, and I wanted to be impressive to my leadership.
So you're talking about these missions, you get intel, you go to the homes, you get the weapons caches, you gather more information. Um, when we think about Iraq, of course, we're thinking about IEDs, we're thinking about ambushes. You're there for 2 months. How much did that stuff figure into your experience in Iraq?
Um, we got in, we got into more than a couple ticks. The first firefight I was ever in, um, the Iraqi army had like drove around. I don't even think it was an Iraqi army unit that was attached to us at the time, but they all I heard was over the radio or maybe later on that it was Iraqi army that had like been spotted. And then we had Kiowas. We had air support like crazy over there, which was badass. Fire uh fire superiority by air support, there's like nothing like it. Especially in contrast to what we had in Afghanistan. But we needed it. Otherwise, we would have gotten even way more chewed up in Iraq. And so we had Kiowas all the time, and they're flying around anytime we're moving. We have Kiowas, and they're like, "Yeah, you got a freaking string of uh, Iraqi army trucks that all these dudes just put their black pajamas on to come shoot at you guys," you know. And that was my first firefight was with the Iraqi army pretending, well, yeah, bad guys pretending to be good guys kind of thing. So
Really? So they were dressed in Iraqi army uniforms. This is post, obviously, we're several years post Saddam. So these guys are Iraqi army on supposedly allies, but they're putting on their civilian outfits and they're actually with the insurgency.
yeah, yeah, that was the intel that I gathered. I didn't pay too much attention to it. It was you're in a war and you're gonna get shot at and you're gonna shoot. And so I was again, I was gonna pay close attention to what my leadership told me to do, and I would have I would have done it, whatever it was.
So I want to transition to Afghanistan, where I think you're in Afghanistan longer than Iraq. But
Yeah.
um, if you could summarize, I mean, sort of the thought experiment would be to put you in front of a group of about 50 people, and you have a few minutes just to kind of say, in a nutshell, here's what my experience in Iraq was like. And maybe that's focusing on a specific event that you remember or just general memories. But you know, if that was your task, just to have a few minutes to describe in general to an interested crowd, you know, here's what my 2 months in Iraq was like, or here's an event that illustrates it, you know, really well. What do you think you would say? What are the things that come to your mind?
So it really depends on the time frame in which you ask, right? At the time, I was really let down that I didn't kill anybody, and I didn't get blown up, but I did get shot at. I got my combat infantry badge, which is a pretty big deal when you're an infantryman. I didn't feel like I earned it, um, but yeah, if you would have asked me then, I would have been kind of upset that um, it was the time was so short. A couple of us asked the first sergeant if we could stay with the next unit, and he said, "Hell no, you're going with me to Afghanistan in 15 months." So yeah, it was a little bit of a letdown, but at the same time, it was like just enough of a taste to like, okay, you're in it. Um, but it just those 2 months give me more issues now than um, most things that I've done in the military. We wish we all would have had an opportunity to spend our time differently.
Awesome.
Well, I can't stress enough how grateful I am for meeting the people I've met and working with the people I've worked with. Um, and that in turn has shaped my entire life into what it is. The amount of humility and discipline that my time in the military gave me, but um, you know, you like I said, we'd go from one house to another, and it wouldn't matter if we found weapons or not. We're taking all the military age males with us, and this wasn't Fallujah, you know. So I don't know if they went and got their wrists slapped by the Iraqi army. That's not what I was told is what was happening. But I remember trying to ease the minds of their kids as they're crying by giving them fucking starburst and um and I remember their wives and daughters freaking screaming as we walked these guys for miles through the dark through these farmlands begging for us to give them back their sons, you know. So yeah, I didn't kill anybody or see anybody get killed, but that shit, you know, just like just speculating. It I can let it drive me crazy a little bit sometimes.
Well, let's go back to, before these thoughts are with you. You're going to Afghanistan. I mean, so when you're flying home from Iraq, you know you've got Afghanistan in your future. At that time, are you looking forward to it?
Oh yeah. I mean, if you're an infantry unit and you're training to do infantry stuff, yeah, you're looking forward to do your job. So for me anyway, I don't know if I mean I didn't join the military for a bonus or for college. I was going into it like I told you, and these were opportunities.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
um, that was my mentality at this point, though. Being even though I'd only been in Iraq for a couple months, we got a whole bunch of new guys, which gave me, even though it wasn't a ton of experience per the other more experienced dudes, it was a lot more experience than what these guys coming in from basic had. So I got fast tracked to I had an Eagle Scout, so I started in the military as a private first class because of that, and because I passed the fitness test per whatever my age group was. Um, but they made me a team leader, and I was super proud of that. I was super excited to, you know, be able to be in that role, and I had a really awesome squad leader that I really wanted to impress and just bring a lot of value to the unit. So
yeah. So just to get started, then discussing your time in Afghanistan, um, how would you describe? I mean, I'm asking this question knowing that the differences between Afghanistan and Iraq are pretty huge, right? There are some similarities, but my sense is that we're talking about very different conflicts. But
yeah.
I mean, in how would you describe how these two war zones were different, just from your experience? Your experience of Iraq, your experience of Afghanistan. What were some of the main differences?
Imagine getting into a fight. Imagine being fresh going into like a fight, right? And you have all the weapons at your disposal that you can imagine, and you can deploy them pretty much however and whenever you want. And now you go to the same fight, and all you have is like one arm tied behind your back.
So the first one is Iraq, the second one's Afghanistan.
Right. Right. Different, but yeah, same type of. I mean, Iraq was a little bit more all over the place, faster pace, everything else, but ultimately it came down to change in leadership, change in agendas.
I mean, so you said in Iraq you had the Kiowas all the helos all around, air support all around.
Hmm.
You just referred to all the firepower you have access to.
Oh yeah.
And what little I know about the part of the conflict in Afghanistan that you were part of, I mean, I've heard stories about, where you get air support, but definitely not as much as you need it. you're sending out, you're sending out convoys to do stupid missions that easily could be done by helo. And it just the impression I have, and by the way, that maybe I'm wrong in what I just said, so please do correct me, but the impression I have is that in Afghanistan, you're not on your own, but you're more, it sounds to me like you're more isolated up there, and you're getting orders from people to do stuff, and you're getting orders from people who don't really know what's going on up there. And it's just a more of an isolated kind of situation. Am I
Say this,
partly on track there?
yeah, 100%. If we got into a firefight or a tick in Iraq, we put that to bed immediately. You will be astonished to see the amount, like the amount of devastation one line unit, one line platoon can deploy in a matter of seconds, especially with air support. And we had howitzers and everything else at our disposal. There was no question if there was going to be a fire mission, or if, we needed to, there was no question. That was, it was subjective. However we wanted to fight that fight, that's what we were doing. And we had support there. In Afghanistan, it was we were just presence. We were just a presence there. And we got attacked way more, in my opinion, way more. I mean, and I was only there for 2 months, right? But at the same time, it's like if they went at Iraq the same way that they went to Afghanistan, we would have had that would have been quite a bit worse as far as people we lost over there. I mean, that's how we had to fight that fight. We couldn't, like I said, one arm tied behind your back. We
In
got
Afghanistan.
in Afghanistan, we got attacked multiple times, many occasions. We couldn't fire back. We couldn't, and that may have been just where we were. It may have been just where we were because we were so close to the border. That may have been our leadership. Was it just us that was getting chewed up and rocketed every day, and we couldn't shoot back? Was it just us that were breaking down our fobs, and our cops, our perfectly good cops, were doing this just so we could go occupy the dirt for 6 months? Is it just us doing this? And what was interesting though was like the unit that came and took over our AO after, um, they had they got like completely ambushed on that hill, like overran, which we had been telling our leadership, based on the gists and intel that we were getting at the time. This place is going to be pretty hot, pretty quick. They're going to bring their A game here, and we got out of there just in the nick of time. And I think they were waiting for a new unit that didn't know the AO well enough, or didn't have their shit together well enough. They're brand new, maybe just had some training. Uh, I don't know if they've been in Afghanistan or not. I mean, I'm sure that some of the guys had, but
Yeah.
perfect opportunity.
So just to go back a second, so you guys are taking rockets, but you can't shoot back, and the reason is because the U.S. forces are worried about collateral damage, right? If you try to take out those rockets, you might take out some civilians in the process, and so you can't shoot back. Is that an example of what you're talking about?
On where they were shot from, because we were in Malakshey. We were right on the border. We were closer to the border than Boris was, and so we got rocketed from what they would say was, oh, it's over there on the other side of the border. We can't shoot into that side. So it's like, okay, well, we're gonna have like any sort of friendly conversation with Pakistan, maybe let them know that there's people in their country shooting at a United States occupied area, and we have the means and capability of doing some pretty devastating stuff to them if they don't do something about it. But nothing. I mean, the only thing we could do is like create checkpoints and things like that where people would drive their wood trucks and everything down from Pakistan, and we'd pull all kinds of munitions and stuff out of their trucks and hand them over to the Afghan army, which at that time we're pretty convinced based on, you know, them hanging out with us and us training them and everything. We'd get our claymores turned around on us in the middle of the night, and you know, just little things like that. Obviously, what kicked off that the unit that the unit that came after us, they had a Afghan army dude drop drop a bunch of grenades into that. There's some pictures I showed you of us like kind of around a fire, like sitting around or whatever, and just imagine us doing that. And we have like Afghan army guys kind of manning battle stations, and we weren't. I mean, complacency kicks in at the end of your deployment, but we had our own guys out. But now we're also being trained to, or we're training these guys thinking that they're going to be on our side or whatever, and here's a dude that drops like 2 or 3 grenades in the middle of your lap, you know, kind of a thing. So their mentality was like, dude, it wasn't what in my brain they were telling us we were there to do, which was like liberate this place. And I mean, obviously now that was then. That was then. We had this mindset, and now everybody's gotten a firsthand look at just how quick that all of our, you know, all of our experiences combine and come together, and now you guys get a taste of what we were dealing with over there. We were telling them, you can't, we're not training anybody. This isn't freaking Rambo, you know, where he comes in and helps liberate that, you know, and they kill all the Russians, and this isn't this place. These people don't want anything to do with this shit. So
And these Afghan soldiers you're training, most of them, what if the price is right, they'll just join the Taliban, right?
sure, yeah. If the price, I mean, I don't even think the price had to be right. I think it was just something for them to do. Some food, and their buddies were doing it or whatever. I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine like having my cousin call me and be like, "Hey, we're gonna join up with these," you know. And then half of them couldn't. The majority of them couldn't read, you know. So they're going off with the Quran and or whatever, and our Terps are like, these guys don't even know what this book says, you know. They're going off of, so anybody joining the Taliban, the Taliban just telling them whatever they want to hear, you know.
Well, this is kind of a big picture thing. I don't know that a soldier in some FOB in Paktika province is going to really think about this, but I mean, even the concept of Afghanistan as a nation. I mean, do you think these soldiers you're supposedly training who aren't even able to read, do you think they have any conception at all of Afghanistan as a country? You know, or it's all tribal, isn't it? It's tribal, it's regional, it's local.
You take this place back 1,000 years, and it's just the same way as it ever was, minus you have like, for some however way, they have like a gas station in the middle of the dirt, and then they're driving these Hesco trucks and whatever. But other than that, man, it's like they haven't changed anything, and the way that they think is not. And so when we're like proposing, oh yeah, we're gonna have elections, and you guys are gonna have a president, and you guys are gonna do this and that, and they're like, you know, they're still like any unoccupied space they're using for the bathroom. And so to me, it's like, fucking let them be, unless there's a bigger agenda, unless there's something else going on out here where we need this area for something.
What I'm hearing is you guys are taking fire from Pakistan, you can't fire back. You're taking fire from a village, you can't fire back because you don't want collateral damage. You guys get into firefights, you can't get the air support that you need some of the time. Um, you know, I mean, I've heard, I don't know, I mean, just some of the missions that you guys get sent on, just I get the feeling you got lieutenant colonels and colonels back in Bagram giving orders that don't make any sense to the 19 and 20-year-olds on the ground. And it's a long tour in Afghanistan.
Your troops need to know what the hell you're doing, you know, in order for them to, especially for you to be some sort of an influential leader to your troops. You got to have, and you got to be able to give enough influence to your commanding officers and you know, from all the ranks down to where we have some sort of an idea. But don't ask me to go down the same fucking wadi 8 times to go give a piss test or to see how much rice costs when we're just going to get blown up. And then don't be an asshole and come on one of these missions as a commanding officer and be like, I don't understand what the problem is. This isn't, we're, you know, why are you guys so afraid of this route? You know, it'd be like belittle your dudes for kind of having their head on a swivel. You know, that they teach that have your head on a swivel and don't get complacent or whatever the case is. But then from the top down, they're like, yeah, just keep taking this route. You get good and bad from all leadership, right? But the takeaway from certain leadership was they were in it for themselves, or this was their last thing, and they don't give a shit, or they never gave a shit. Who knows? But from our perspective, we would have these guys, and then we really felt like we weren't like we. I was trying to get my guys back. That was in the. That was my. That was all I wanted to do. That was my war, right? I wasn't trying to win medals or build my resume or I just wanted to get these essentially the 3 guys that I was in charge of, but I wanted to be effective in doing that for everybody in my platoon. It didn't seem like some of our leadership could give a fuck about that. We would get ambushed all the time going to and from this place, and they would want us to take the shortest means possible, which was Volkswagen. And this is the route that we got chewed up on, like actively chewed up, like close quarter 360 ambush type shit. Not like we're gonna get some rockets here. They got a machine gun fire from over here kind of a thing, but you're gonna be in. You're gonna have to fight for your life for a little bit here so that you guys can, you know, come home and take a hot fucking shower. So we were coming home. I think we were just coming home from like a few weeks of being out there. It was our turn to rotate back to the fob, and we were just doing what we do, driving down this road. I don't know how many Humvees we had, but we blew up every Humvee we could until they decided to give us these MRAPs. But we were 100%. We were like at 100% for. We were batting 1,000 when we came down to getting blown up with these freaking Humvees. But
No IDs, the Humvees are hitting, or
yeah,
IDs.
yeah. And this is shit where we'd be calling up and be like, "Hey, there's a guy digging right here. Can we at least this is oh well, let's throw some flares at him kind of thing." No, that's not how in my 2 months of Iraq, that's not how shit went down, right? So what do they go back and be like, yeah, we were digging, trying to put this thing in the ground, and they shot some of their flares up and we left. So worst case scenario, they're gonna shoot some flares at us, kind of thing.
Yeah, right. And you're like, this is the Taliban guys talking to each
Yeah,
other.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah. So they're like,
crazy Americans
and
don't
this
shoot
and
flares when we're planting IDs.
and this was all around our like with the rumblings of the entire company, like in different areas that all came down to one key leadership group that were like, no, we're not killing this guy. No, we're not gonna, recon by fire. We're not gonna do this. We're not gonna do that. That is intended for you to end your life and your buddies' lives. And you will potentially roll over that at some point, and we will probably ask you to. but we're not gonna have you do anything to disrupt that action right now. But you can shoot some star flares or something over them. So we're driving down this road and we got blown up, and I was like, game fucking on. I'm over this. And I jumped out of that hatch and just started shooting at fucking movement. I was over it. And and then Bruce started laying down. I think he was on a 240 or something, and he started laying down. Yeah, it was completely just it wasn't even I was more frustrated at our leadership than I was at the people that fucking blew us up. You know what I mean? But I was like, this is like almost like this is your fault. I'm gonna kill everybody in this field now, and this is your fault, kind of a thing. And then I get on the radio, um get PID, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, yeah, that's probably a good idea. We should probably get some PID. Have no qualms of stopping that firefight immediately. And at that point, we didn't get we like I don't think they realized what kind of a like if we would have fought like that every time we got blown up, they would have stopped. They would have stopped. They would have chilled for a little bit. Or if we had Kiowas or Blackhawks rolling with us every time, getting ready to throw rockets wherever they wanted, it just wouldn't have been. We wouldn't have had these casualties that we did. In the villages, we'd have candy. They always wanted pens, stuff like that. But it was like they knew what time it was. They had soldiers there before, and 9 times out of 10, and it was like expected almost,
Yeah.
almost like and that goes to show too, like the most minute and minuscule type of reward for being a living thing populating a certain part of this planet, and you have this occupying force come in, and the the most excited they're going to get that day is when you hand them a freaking pen.
Were you there when Julian was hit?
Uh-huh. Yep. Same old shit, different day. Gonna go down the same wadi we do every day. So I was actually asleep. I was asleep in the back of the, not laying down, but I was just like just kind of sitting there, half asleep, I guess you'd say, as we drove down this wadi, waiting to make our dismount. And this is after I got back from leave, after they've already been hit twice on this same route. And so I had heard that they'd been hit twice. I imagine I probably wouldn't have been asleep if I was in any part of those firefights. But when this is like your day in, day out kind of a thing, and you're in a uh, heightened sense all the time, you kind of chill wherever, right? For me anyway. But I was kind of asleep. All of a sudden, um, I heard a big blast and chaos, immediate chaos. Radios were going off. We were getting rounds all over the place. We popped the back hatch. I immediately jump out, and I didn't see it. I didn't hear it, but Dixon said that a RPG went right past my head. Luckily, it didn't hit our truck. Like I said, that was something he saw. I didn't see it. I had I was a designated marksman at the time, and so I was attempting to get high ground. I didn't know what had happened to the front trucks. Two MRAPs, and then we had like two or three Afghan army trucks in between those, and then our back two MRAPs, and that was the formation. And I had, I think multiple, like several of us was like, that would be rad if we could keep our 4 trucks together. You know, if those two, if one of those 2 trucks in front go down, then they're fucked. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. They got hit up front, and I didn't know who got hit or what happened. I jumped out and immediately started. Uh, I I tried to occupy some high ground. I didn't know that anyone had been actually hit. I just knew that someone hit an IE. I thought someone had hit an IED. I didn't know that the first truck had actually been hit with an RPG. And I'd been hit by IEDs before. These MRAPs take them like a champ. So I was like, well, this is just another Tuesday. Someone got, but then we were getting a small arms fire and everything. And so I was like, okay, well, let's try to sort this out. And it was a matter of me. I went with another squad leader. We went up. I think Stan wasn't there at the time, so I was acting squad leader for my squad. We go up to this hill. I'm trying to figure out kind of where and what to shoot at. And all of a sudden, um, I catch wind that um, Barry had been hit, and our company or our platoon leader had been hit. That their truck had been hit, and so I get back down to the truck, and I don't really see a whole lot. Maybe it's just in my brain, but I don't really see a whole lot of shit happening. I didn't realize that Acosta had already been up there, and they're the ones that kind of made the call and whatever. But our medic was back with us, and we're so many trucks back, and because the Afghan army was in our way, and then I see all these dudes, all these trucks, all their trucks just kind of peel and then park, and then they all jumped out and laid on the ground.
The Afghan
And
soldiers.
the Afghans,
So
yeah,
they're not fighting.
no, the gunner for the MRAP that I was in, I don't. It was a saw gunner. They were a saw gunner. Their saw was in the cab somewhere. So I picked that thing up, and I just started firing that shit over these Afghans' heads. And I don't know if they understood me, but I was like, I'm gonna kill every one of you right now if you don't get in this fight. And they did. I think they got that message because they picked up their shit and started, but it would have been cool if they would have like got their trucks out of the way so we could get our trucks up in position. But at least they got into the fight. Um, and that's my perspective. There might have been more that this whole firefight lasted in my mind. It seemed like at the time forever, right? But now that I think about it, it's like it's one of the most devastating things that has ever happened to me in my life that could have taken no longer than 10 seconds. I don't know, seems like that now. But I get down after that happens, and I get back. I grab my rifle, and um, I realize that our medic is back with us, and that we have troops that have been hit and or sustained injuries. And I yelled at our platoon sergeant, we need to get this medic up to those trucks. And he said, we need to gain fire superiority first. And I was like, we're in a fucking 360-degree ambush. We're not gaining that without air support. And then I just grabbed the medic and I was like, you're on me. And we just ran. And like I said, I didn't know I guess it didn't click that anybody had been up to those trucks yet. But Acosta and a couple other guys had been up there. I grabbed the medic. We got there, and the gun was down. That truck had been hit. The gun was down. The gunner he had been peppered with shrapnel, and uh, he got out, and they were dealing with him, and we got Truesdale sorted with the medic, and Barry was still up um, in the driver's seat. And they just said, I just said, is there anybody else or whatever? And they're like, yeah, Barry's up there. And so I said, okay, I'm coming for you, Barry. I got you, man. And I opened the door and and I thought, this is weird. Like his vest was open, his ILTV was open and everything. And in that instance, I was like, this is weird. Like I didn't know anybody had been in there yet, you know, but they had already been in there. They just couldn't get him out, and they didn't have a medic to attend to him because we were back there fiddle fucking with the Afghan army. So I uh, I didn't know his state, and um, I didn't this is a gut check for me because I didn't check his pulse. I didn't check for breathing. I just wanted to get him out of that truck. And then our once we got up there and established that area, and then we finally got like kind of like some sort of a battle position around that truck um, that we could fight from. Then our platoon sergeant came up and he got up in the truck and he checked Barry's pulse and everything. And he didn't say shit. He just got out. He just got back out of the truck. But I saw him do that. And I was like, fuck. I was mad at myself that I didn't do that. Um, all he said was, get this gun up. And so uh, I was like, we had to get Barry out of this truck, man. And the doc came up. I think it was the medic came up into the other side, and we began to like try to pick him up. And I realized right then that he was in pieces inside of his skin. Like they're like, you know, and I just said, we need to stop. We're gonna pull him apart. We got to stop. And then I think that's when Aponte said, you got to get the gun up. So I went in the turret. I freaking cleared that Mark 19 and uh, started shooting at things. And I've emptied like 200 rounds of grenades into whatever I thought would blow up. And they finally called in not official air support, but they had a flyby. I don't know what kind of jets they were, but I don't know if they were F-16, whatever was flying around out there, but they couldn't drop ordnance because everything was too danger close. And so um, as I'm dumping rounds at this, they're I start seeing these things flying around us, and everything's still chaos, like it's still just chaotic. And then I'm seeing them flying closer and closer. Uh, and then they're really close. I'm like, they're gonna kill all of us right now. This is it. Whoever ordered, like they're gonna kill everybody. Um, and then I just remember just that that backblast or whatever come through and just rumble that entire area. I swear to God, I felt the heat off the back of those things. How it was like the lowest and closest I've ever been to a airplane flying, you know, in my life. And uh,
Were they strafing the enemy, or why did they come in that low?
I think they were there to drop ordnance, but they realized that you guys are just too close to all these guys, and we're going to kill you if we drop anything. We were able to get out of there and kind of like we got the Afghan trucks out of the way. We got these trucks turned around, and we were able to drive back and kind of regroup and everything else. And then Aponte was like, "We got to get back in there and whatever else." And I think it was, I don't remember who. I yelled at him, said, "I haven't been doing this very long, but I know what right looks like," and that was not it. And
This is what you said to the platoon sergeant?
yeah, yeah. And I felt kind of like that was my place at that time because I was acting squad leader, and I didn't even know Julian was dead yet. Um, I was just in that gun and we drove out and then we got out and no, I did know. I did know he was because I was still up in the gun and Frank came over and there was helicopters landing and they were exfilling dudes and I was like, what's Barry's status? And he's like, he's dead, bro. So they were like, we at that time they wanted to go back in, but we were chewed up and someone had told Aponte like you got to take a look around. Like we're um maybe it was Acosta, I can't remember who, but they were like, finally they got some sense into him that we were mangled up to a point where there was no way we could go back into some sort of a ambush like that and make it out. I mean, we barely made it out being fresh, you know? So they ended up calling, it was second platoon, I think, coming from another area to come out. And then they asked for volunteers to stay. Um, to hang out with second platoon. Um, and it was myself and Fink was Barry's team leader, and he wasn't. He was like they had him on guard or something for that mission, so he wasn't there for that firefight, and he came up with second platoon. Um, and just being a team leader, you know, and a squad leader, and Pinky was one of the E4 mafia that brought me up into the unit. Um, and so I respected the hell out of I still respect the hell out of that guy. But I looked at him and I was like, man, I'm sorry. Like I was devastated for him. And he was just poised. He just was like just the amount of military experience that he had just showed right then and there. Cause he was just like not that he wasn't devastated, but he was so good at holding those emotions in during times like that. He just said it's okay. He's in a better place. And we stayed. We stayed the night. We went back up and parked our trucks and stayed the night there with second platoon. And we were going to do a battle damage assessment the next day and clear. We didn't clear houses. I don't think we were never allowed to go in houses, even after shit like this. You know, we could take a peek in a window, but we were never allowed to. Iraq, we would have been in those houses in 2 seconds, clearing every square inch. I didn't tell anybody, but the next day, that was the 4th of November. And uh, I was born on the 5th of November. So I didn't tell anybody because we kind of had this rule where it's like if it's your birthday, you don't go out or, you know, if you haven't, this was after this incident, we decided that if you were about to go on leave, you're not going out. Um, but I just remember on my birthday, um, looking for these guys that killed Julian and just thinking back to that firefight and all the things that went down and just being so upset and just trying to make any sense of it, right? And we didn't find, well, we might have found like some bloody rags or something, but we didn't find a body part. We didn't find, not to my knowledge. I don't know if someone put something in their pocket. I didn't know that you couldn't even tell. I was looking at these houses that I was putting all this 40 mic in. You could barely tell that I hit them with anything, you know, might as well have been shooting slingshots at them. I would have thought that I would have penetrated, you know, there, I mean, there's something to be said about 1,000-year-old mud hut infrastructure, I guess. But yeah, nothing. So we packed up our shit and left. Felt like it because I was so close with my guys, and I really leaned on them and their attitudes and the way that they were able to carry on and deal with that. And me being a father of two, what struck me was what hit me hardest was he was going to see his kid for the first time, you know, and it just crushed. I wasn't super close with Barry. I mean, I had a lot of respect for him as one of the younger guys. He seemed that I mean he always carried himself in the most professional way and led by example. Had a freaking just a stellar attitude, man. I went numb. Like I just went numb for a little bit. And I remember having like little meetings with Stan and telling him like, dude, I'm gonna have to lean on you here for a little while because like the Stu that you knew before you left, that guy's gone. So it really changed my perspective about a lot of things. But we still had we still had a we were still months away from leaving, and I had a job to do, and so you know I was blessed with a super squared away team. They carried they carried my weight for a little bit. We got our shit together. I got my shit together as good as I could, and we just kept rolling.
So you've been married 20 years. So put yourself in your wife's position now, and someone asks her, how did the war, meaning the war on terror, so the fighting in Iraq, the fighting in Afghanistan, how did the experience of combat change Stu? How did Stu come home from war different, if at all? What do you think she would say?
It's I told you earlier that we were on the verge of divorce and and we're in a really rocky place at this time, being really young kids and taking on this whole experience of being, thrown into adulthood and everything else. The military 110,000% saved our marriage. No doubt about it in my mind or her mind. Um, for multiple reasons, not just because we joined in a time where the economy completely took a shit and we were already in a rocky place, and that would have been even more devastating. But given given the circumstances where I left out, I didn't even tell you that. As soon as I got to the unit, they were like, "This is a rapid deploying unit. We're about to deploy. We're going to need you for another 2 years." And what ended up being a 2 year stint at the lead pitch of getting into this ended up being 5 years. But she took to military life like, I mean, so well for I mean, just from being just having friends within the community and actively involved and everything like that. And I know that's not your question, but I want to give some context as to what her mind frame is like, because um, my wife shares a lot of the same opinions that I do about war and what causes them and what leads to them and why we fight them and all this other stuff. And she's more or less on the same page where she understands it's a necessary evil in some instances. In some instances, it's not. But I guess, more or less not a necessary evil, but coming to terms with why we do what we do as human beings to each other. And so we're happier than we've ever been, and we have our shit together more than we ever have. And I think we couldn't have done that without our time in the military. Not just me being in the military and what I did, but because she was there holding down the fort for 4 winters in Alaska by herself while I was out training or deployed or whatever the case may be. And she's raising these kids on her own, figuring it out, never been away from her family before in her life. And I moved her out to Alaska, of all places, to figure it out. And she's pretty she's pretty understanding, like 100% understanding, and she's 1,000% supportive of um, me and my endeavors and whatever I'm trying to do. She's always been super supportive, and I think a big reason for that is that is able to give her that sales pitch on joining, and it turned out to be a pretty successful venture for us, which I think ultimately uh, helped us grow as a couple. But she's witnessed, I mean, she's seen, you know, she's watched me clear my house multiple times a night. She's, had to explain to tell my kids that I'm not going to shoot the tooth fairy, or she's, she's been
What do you
super
mean?
supportive.
What do you mean she's watched you clear the house?
Just wake up in the middle of the night, any little bump or anything, like just being coming from war into like a civilian, or back on post, and you're she's got the full gamut of what it's like to be a infantry soldier's wife coming back from war, and not your average. I don't know, maybe everyone's war is different, right? Maybe everyone's war is different, but for her and I, it was a I got everything I asked for, and there are some repercussions in sometimes in life when you get what you ask for. So, but I don't think that I'd be here. I know I wouldn't if she wasn't around.